the primary is just one day away now, and there's many candidates vying for the position of state superintendent. Branden Durst is one of three candidates hoping to be the Republican Party nominee, and we're pleased to be able to talk to him right now about his run for this position. Branden, glad to have you with us today.
Thanks, Rick. Glad we made it work.
Yeah, good to catch up with you. How has your trip around the state been over the last few months?
Well, I started running back officially in January of last year. I really started hard in April. So we've had, 13, 14 months of campaigning, been around the state of Idaho several times over, put 50,000 miles on my car. And we're happy to be close to the end of the primary and get ready for the general election, provided we get a good result tomorrow.
That's great. How has any particular insights or things you've learned as you've met with people across the state?
It's really interesting. I'm born and raised here in Idaho, and I've heard people say before Idaho's really 3 or 4 separate states in one. And I never really appreciated that as much as I do now that I've campaigned throughout the different parts of the state. But I think the one common theme that I've heard from Bear Lake to Boundary County is the parents are tired. They don't feel respected or trusted, and they want some real change in their school superintendent. And so, they're all talking about the same sorts of things, wanting to stop the indoctrination that's happening in their schools. They want to have choice to be able to make decisions for their kids. And so that is the one thing that I've heard over and over and over again, no matter where I've been in the state.
Wow. Okay. Well, has there been any spot in particular that you've never been to that it was kind of a pleasure for you to get to go visit?
Yeah, well, I've been on a lot of roads I've never been on before. Typically if you're traveling, you go on the road that's the quickest to get wherever you want to go to. And I deviated from that after I drove those roads a few times in this campaign. I started taking some less traveled roads to kind of go to places I haven't been. There are some places up in Lemhi County, for example, that I had never been to before, and they're gorgeous. Just absolutely beautiful, breathtaking parts of the state. And I think part of it too is I've never spent as much time in some different parts of the state. I spent 9 days in Blackfoot at the Eastern Idaho State Fair. Never done that before. And that was a unique experience. I spent, considerable amount of time up north. And so I think it's not just seeing new places, but it's being able to experience some places I've been to before in a much more deep way that's been quite illuminating to me.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. You got to travel across the state and see some new places and learn some things that maybe you didn't know before.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your run for this position. I want to get to what your goals are if you are in fact if you become the party's nominee for state superintendent. But I do want to talk a little bit about your background up to this point. You are a former state legislator.
Yep.
You're from Boise, right?
Just outside of Boise. I grew up outside of the city, but yeah, very close.
So you were a state legislator back in 2013, is that right?
I first got elected to the House in 2006. I got elected to the Senate in 2012.
Okay. So just looking at your past run in those positions, any highlights for you as far as your accomplishments as a legislator?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the biggest accomplishments that I have to point to is my work on the Advanced Opportunities Program. I was one of the co-creators of that program back in 2010 with Senator Steve Thain, who's the current chairman of the Education Committee. We were both in the House together, and we got that started. That's been incredibly successful. In fact, there's not nearly any school districts in the entire state of Idaho that don't talk about their Advanced Opportunities Program in their districts, and so that's been a very successful program. There's a lot of other little stuff that I've done. I did some work on veterans' rights, helping veterans and their spouses be able to get access to licenses so that if they got deployed here to Idaho, or not, if they got rebased here to Idaho, they'd be able to, continue making a living. But those are two of the big things that I worked on as a state legislator. And then actually, as a private citizen last year, I got the No Public Funds for Abortion Act passed into law. I worked on that bill for 3 years, and that was a big deal too. And so a lot of experience in legislative space, but some accomplishments in the education area too.
Great. What prompted you to get involved in politics initially?
I was raised in a pretty political home. I felt like, it was something I was very interested in. I saw the good and the bad that it could do, and decided that I could use the gifts that I've been given to be able to do something positive for my community and for my state. And so it's just kind of been something that I've been drawn to. I felt called to do it. And so it's just kind of where the path has led me. And I've tried to do other things and always keeps getting stuck back to this. So,
Yeah. As a member of the Senate, I believe one of your committee assignments was an education committee.
Yeah, I always served on no matter which chamber I was in, I was always on the education committee. That was always my big committee, the one that I cared the most about.
Gotcha. Do you have any prior experience in education outside of that?
Yeah, I actually served at the community college level. I was an instructor and a curriculum developer as well. I've been a high school coach. I helped and I helped start and run a boys and girls tutoring program. I've been a substitute teacher, all sorts of different things. But it's primarily my education experience, or my experience in the education world is in education policy, which I think actually is a better fit for the superintendent's role because it is really an education policy management position. So
I see. Okay. So with that being said, why have you decided to run for state superintendent?
Because I was waiting and waiting for our current superintendent to step up and start fighting for parents. And I just heard her continue to, push it back down to local districts. And I said, you know what, we need somebody who's going to stand up for us at the state level, who's going to fight for parents. As a husband and a father of 5, that's something that I saw firsthand during the last couple of years during the pandemic, is the impact that's had on my kids and on my family. And I said, we need somebody who's going to stand up for us, who's going to really unabashedly support parents and fight for parents and make sure that they are the decision makers in their kids' education. So that's, that was really the impetus behind my decision to take on this endeavor.
Do you see any current obstacles with that goal currently?
Absolutely. Of course there are. I mean, if it was easy, it would be done, right? I mean, it's not. There's plenty of obstacles. The education establishment is an obstacle. They like things the way they are. And in many cases, they don't want to see the changes that I want to see. They don't see the problems that parents oftentimes see. It's because, it's, what you see is from where you stand. And so they don't see it from where they're at. But those obstacles aren't insurmountable. And I think that's the key, is having somebody with the right background, with the right understanding of the process, and with a good understanding of how state government works can get over those obstacles and can push through to get the solutions and get the outcomes that we expect out of our state.
What do you see as the biggest challenge in the state of Idaho in terms of education right now?
I think the biggest obstacle right now is the lack of opportunity for kids and for parents. I think that, parents and their students get stuck based off their zip code or their size of their bank account as to where their kids go to school. And I think that's a real problem. I think that's been really limiting for our student achievement. I think that's been really limiting for all sorts of different things. And so I think that is really the biggest thing we need to overcome to really transform our education system and make it the best that it can be.
Gotcha. Now, there was one thing I did want to bring up with you, and I know that this could be somewhat of a negative thing, and I'm not trying to make it that way, but I just think it is a fair question since it has news. Your wife has been in the news recently for some court-related things, and I wondered if there's anything you wanted to say about that, maybe clear up any misconceptions people might have, or
it's a totally fair question. My wife was falsely accused of abuse. That was not pursued any further. That case has been taken care of. It was out of her spanking one of our kids twice with a wooden spoon on Christmas Eve, and the child was not being respectful. It wasn't obeying, wasn't responding to all the other sorts of things we were trying to do. It wasn't even very hard. But things can happen in a political world where things get drawn out of proportion, and that's what happened here. Frankly, I think that most parents, if they had knew what had happened, they'd think, gosh, I could be facing the same problems, because I'm sure there's plenty of parents that are listening to this who have done the exact same things, would never even think that this would be an issue. But we're in a political world right now, and things that happen in political worlds become political. And so we're confident that we have always disciplined our children appropriately. We've always done the right thing by our family, and we trust that the Lord is protecting that. Frankly, we look at this from a biblical perspective, and we believe that we have maintained that biblical perspective in what we've done, and we're grateful to be able to be moving on from it. And I know that this has just become a distraction in the campaign, but at the end of the day, this just goes to show that we really believe that parents need to be in charge, and this is what happens when the government thinks that they should step in and intervene in that.
For those who might be concerned about, that particular incident, anything you'd say to alleviate voters' concerns about that?
Well, first of all, I just tell them they can call me directly. My number is 208-505-8893. They can call me and they can talk to me about it. They can talk to me and my wife both. We'd be happy to explain it to them. Ultimately, this was a much ado about nothing. That's why the prosecutor's office basically sought to get the case taken care of as quickly as possible, because they knew they weren't going to be able to get anything out of it. There were some political shenanigans happening in the background that was forcing people's hands, but it's gone now. And if parents were held to the same standard that apparently my family was, I think a lot of us would be finding ourselves in trouble with court. That's not the way that it's supposed to be. That's not the way that it's ever been before. I can tell you, as a child, I dealt with much worse, and no one ever thought thought twice about that. But we respect parents' rights. We believe that parents need to make these decisions. We believe the biblical basis for disciplining children is appropriate, and that's what we believe in.
So, if you are selected as your party's nominee for this position, what I guess, looking ahead at the general election, what is your main focus if you are elected in November as the state superintendent?
Well, my first focus is going to be to reorient the State Department of Education to make it parents focused. Spend so much of its time thinking about what school districts care about, not so much what parents think about. So really the first practical thing I'm going to do is reorient the department so that it is more parent focused. From a policy standpoint, one of the very first things we're going to do is we're going to push hard for school choice where money falls students. We have the bill already, the Empower Parents in Education Act, which you can find on my website, durstfridaho.com/EPEA. We're going to be pushing that hard next legislative session to make sure that we give parents real choice in their kids' education so they can make decisions and really be able to decide where their children learn, what they learn, and empower them to do that.
Given all of your experience up to this point, why should people vote for you?
I think that people should vote for me if they think that we need to change, if they really believe that the system right now isn't working. This race really distills itself down into two competing visions. One of, if you folks have watched the other two videos that you present with my two opponents, they're both, they talk a lot about their 20 plus years experience in the system. And I talk a lot about my years experience outside of the system, trying to make sure that we reform it. So if parents want a, parent-driven system by someone who's on the outside, who's willing to do the hard things to shake things up, then that's why they should vote for me, because I've got the ability, I've got the background. I have a master's degree in public policy. I've got an education specialist degree in executive educational leadership. I've been a state legislator. I've been a small business owner. I understand this role probably better than most have that ever run for this office. And I'm ideally qualified to make this job what it should be, which is a job that focuses on parents first.
So we've been talking with Branden Durst, who is a candidate for state superintendent. The primary is Tuesday, May 17th, and then the general election is November 8th. Glad to talk to you today, Branden. Is there anything else you want to add?
I would just add that if parents want to contact me, they can check out my website, durstforidaho.com, durstforidaho.com. Or again, they can call me at any time, 208-505-8893. Call or text. I'll respond directly to them. And, I'm open for questions. I'm open for those things. And we're excited for what comes forward from this campaign.